도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로.
나에게 APEC은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성,
포용,
개발.
신라의 정신이 APEC 2025로 이어집니다.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Over 300 South Koreans who were detained in the United States are now on their way home, a week after they were arrested in a massive immigration raid at a Hyundai plant in Georgia. The charter flight is set to arrive in Seoul this afternoon. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says South Korea must either accept the bilateral trade framework deal reached in July or face tariffs. He says there is no flexibility in the agreement, ramping up pressure on Seoul. South Korea's ruling party unilaterally passed revised bills on special counsel investigations into the previous administration, which includes a probe into former President Yoon's martial law declaration and allegations against his wife, Kim Gun-hee. South Koreans that were detained in a U.S. immigration raid on a battery plant in Georgia are now on their way home after a week in detention. A charter flight carrying more than 300 workers is now on its way back to Seoul. Our Parthenogenesis starts us off.
At 2:18 a.m. Thursday local time, the detained Koreans were released from the Folsom Detention Center. As agreed in advance with U.S. authorities, the workers left the detention facilities without handcuffs and shackles and wearing their regular clothes. Escorted by South Korean diplomatic officials, they boarded 8 buses that drove around 450 kilometers nonstop to Atlanta International Airport. Many workers appeared exhausted after a week in poor conditions, though some waved in relief to reporters through the tinted bus windows. At the airport, they bypassed the main terminal and completed departure procedures at the cargo terminal before boarding a waiting Korean Air charter plane. The flight departed Atlanta around noon with 316 Koreans on board, along with 14 foreign nationals from China, Japan, and Indonesia. One Korean chose to remain in the U.S. due to family ties. First Vice Foreign Minister Park In-ju, who traveled to the U.S. to help resolve the situation, and LG Energy Solutions CEO Kim Dong-myung also boarded the flight. After a 15-hour journey, the plane is scheduled to land at Incheon Airport at about 3 p.m. Korean time on Friday. The raid that led to the detentions took place on September 4th at the Hyundai LG Energy Solution battery plant construction site in Ellaville, Georgia, where U.S. immigration authorities took 475 people, including more than 300 Koreans, into custody. The workers had been slated for release on Wednesday, but their return was delayed by 1 day after President Donald Trump directed U.S. authorities to pause repatriation and consider allowing them to stay and help train U.S. workers. The shockwave of the ICE raid is expected to set back construction of the Hyundai LG Energy Solution plant in Georgia by at least 2 to 3 months. Hyundai Motor Company CEO Jose Munoz told Bloomberg the raid disrupted progress, but emphasized that the company remains firmly committed to the U.S. market. Parthenogenesis, Arirang News.
And Seoul and Washington are preparing talks to improve the visa system after the mass detention of South Korean workers in Georgia ended with their voluntary departure. During a meeting between Seoul's Foreign Minister Cho Hyun and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Wednesday in Washington, Cho proposed forming a joint working group on visas. Officials say the group has not yet been formally launched, but discussions are expected to move quickly. Talks are likely to cover clearer rules for the B1 short-term business visa, the possibility of creating a new visa for Korean professionals, and efforts to expand the access to the H-1B visa, which allows skilled employment in the United States. South Korean workers detained in the immigration raid in Georgia are now on their way home, as we just heard. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Min Jung-un, professor at Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Professor Min, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So these workers will be returning to Seoul this afternoon, and Foreign Minister Cho Hyun says Washington has promised that these workers will not face disadvantages when they travel to the U.S. again in the future. Is it safe to say that the situation has now been completely resolved?
Yeah, personally, I think that it is safe to say that those workers will not face disadvantages when they travel back to the United States. Of course, we need to see what will actually happen when they travel back to the U.S. in the future. But anyway, I think that it would be safe for them to get back to the U.S. in the future. As you know, South Korean government secured assurances from its U.S. counterparts that the detained workers held in Georgia would face no re-entry issues when they get back to the U.S. In addition, the two countries made it clear that the detained workers would not be physically restrained like handcuffs on their way to the Atlanta airport to board the chartered flight. And more importantly, it was known that President Trump fully recognized this matter and ordered his cabinet to find a solution that there would be no problem when those skilled workers enter the U.S. and stay a while to do their jobs. And initially, the detained workers were supposed to board the chartered plane Wednesday afternoon, but the plane was delayed of unspecified U.S. circumstances. And as you reported, it was revealed that it's largely due to the fact that President Trump told his officials to encourage the South Koreans to stay in the country to continue their work. So I think what President Trump mentioned shows that there would be no disadvantages for the South Korean workers when re-entering the U.S. And South Korea understands this as confirmation that no records of illegal stay will be kept and that their return will be treated as a voluntary departure. So taken together, I believe that there would be no disadvantages when the skilled workers get back to the U.S. in the future.
Right, hopefully. And, they were supposed to board the flight on Wednesday initially, but it got delayed. And Seoul's foreign ministry says, like you just mentioned, this was because President Donald Trump asked these skilled Korean workers to stay there a little bit longer and train American workers. What's the story there? And is it a realistic plan for Korean companies to train American workers in fields such as shipbuilding or manufacturing?
Yes, and basically I think it's a good sign that President Trump ordered the cabinet members and officials to figure out whether the South Korean workers wanted to stay and keep training the American workers during their stay. But we will see how it will work anyway. Anyway, as you mentioned, the President Trump wanted to figure out that if those skilled workers from South Korea wanted to stay and continue their work in the United States, and the President Trump recognized that they needed to stay in the United States because they needed to do their work because there would be no alternatives to do their job from the American workers, and they also needed to train the American workers for the very skilled jobs. And for the Ministry of South Korea, Cho Hyun mentioned that President Trump's consideration for South Korea in this manner was based on the deep bond forged between the two leaders during the successful South Korea-U.S. summit, as well as South Korea's consistent position regarding the detention issue. So I think that the detention issue could be resolved very fast because the South Korean government coped with it very speedily and appropriately. And personally, I'm really glad to see that those detained workers finally got back to home and relax, and hopefully they will get back to the United States for their job in the near future.
Right, absolutely. And what's important would be to keep this from happening again. And U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Lando is scheduled to visit South Korea tomorrow. Will this visa issue be on the agenda?
Well, I'm not sure about it. As you mentioned, it is known that he will make a 2-day trip to Seoul from Saturday through Sunday, and it will be his first visit to South Korea. And I think his visit to South Korea this time was planned well before the detention issue, and I think the two sides already fixed the agendas that they would talk about during the meetings. Specifically, it is known that the two countries would talk about the ROK-US alliance and other diplomatic and security issues like alliance modernization and the strategic flexibility of U.S. forces in South Korea. But considering the importance of the detention issue, there is a possibility that he can confirm how the Trump government perceived it and what it could do to solve the problem. And the South Korean counterparts can also utilize his visit to emphasize how important this detention issue can be for South Korea and the South Korean people, and ask for finding a solution that there would be no problem that South Korean skilled workers can stay and work in the United States in terms of creating the new type of visa for South Korean skilled workers, like E4 visa or something like that.
Right, we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Min, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks so much.
Meanwhile, on trade issues, the United States says South Korea must either accept the bilateral trade framework deal reached in July or face tariffs, pressuring Seoul to sign the agreement. South Korea's industry minister has now departed to Washington as negotiations remain deadlocked over key details. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick warned Thursday that South Korea must either accept the bilateral trade framework deal reached in July or face tariffs as negotiations remain deadlocked over key details. Speaking in an interview with CNBC, Lutnick emphasized that there is no flexibility in the agreement. Under the deal, Washington pledged to lower reciprocal tariffs on South Korean goods to 15%, down from the proposed 25%, in return for Seoul's commitment to investing $350 billion in the United States, along with other promises. But the two governments have yet to agree on how the investment package will be structured, how profits will be shared, and other terms. Lutnick pointed to South Korean President Lee Jae-myung's visit to Washington last month, noting that no agreement was signed during his summit with President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, South Korea's industry minister Kim Jong-kwon departed for Washington on Thursday to hold follow-up negotiations. His office said he is expected to meet with Lutnick and other U.S. officials to discuss tariff issues and potential adjustments to the visa system in light of the mass detentions. Since late July, Seoul and Washington have been working to finalize the framework trade agreement, which was first announced on July 30th. In addition to lowering general tariffs on Korean goods, the Trump administration also agreed to cut tariffs on Korean automobiles from the current 25% down to 15%. Officials on both sides say the upcoming talks will be critical in determining whether the deal moves forward as envisioned or whether new tariff penalties will be imposed on South Korean exports to the United States. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Over at the National Assembly, a fierce confrontation broke out between lawmakers across the aisle after the ruling party unilaterally passed the revised bills on special counsel investigations into the previous administration. Now, this came a day after the rival parties had reached an agreement on the revisions. Our political correspondent Shin-Young reports.
Despite bipartisan agreement, the ruling party pushed through its own version of the bills to reinforce the 3 special counsel investigations against the Yoon Suk-yeol government. At Thursday's plenary session, the party unilaterally passed revisions to the special counsel investigations into former President Yoon Suk-yeol's martial law declaration, allegations against former First Lady Kim Gon-hee, and the death of a Marine during flood relief operations in 2023. Under the bills, special investigations into the martial law attempt and the former First Lady could be extended from 150 to 180 days, while the probe into the Marine's death could be prolonged from 120 to 150 days. This comes a day after the floor leaders of the ruling Democratic Party and main opposition People Power Party agreed to keep the 3 special counsel investigations at their current durations and struck a compromise on staffing, allowing each team up to 10 additional personnel. However, on Thursday morning, the DP declared the negotiations had collapsed, explaining that there had been backlash within the party and that the PPP rejected its offer to resume talks.
I couldn't accept it, and since it went against the party leadership's position, I immediately ordered renegotiations. I was also quite surprised by what happened yesterday.
The PPP, which boycotted the vote, criticized the breakdown of the agreement, saying the DP will be responsible for any future disruptions in the National Assembly.
The original special counsel bill from the DP included many problematic provisions, such as unlimited investigation extensions and an expanded scope. After our party raised objections, a difficult compromise was reached. However, on President Lee Jae-myung's 100th day in office, the DP broke that agreement.
Meanwhile, the National Assembly passed a motion for the arrest of PPP lawmaker Kwon Sung-dong with 173 for, 1 against, 1 abstention, and 2 invalid votes amid a PPP boycott. Last month, a special counsel team filed for an arrest warrant against Kwon for allegedly receiving illegal political funds from a former Unification Church official in 2022. Shin-Young, Arirang News.
One export industry on the rise is K-Beauty. You might be just thinking about simple lotion or makeup, but it goes beyond that. And at the K-Beauty Expo just outside of Seoul, everything is on display. Our Kim Do-yeon was there.
For an industry where appearances are everything, this year's K-Beauty Expo Korea is putting its best face forward. It opened its doors on Thursday with the 17th annual event, 30% larger than last year, hosting over 500 companies from 12 nations. K-Beauty brought in over $10 billion in exports last year. And at this expo, it is showing its diversity. It's not just lotion and sunblock at the booths. From hair products to skin healing devices, companies are showing their latest products to potential clients, with some deals offering up to 80% off. Here at the expo, you can even get your skin analyzed instantly with a 3D image generated. Here, you can see that I have freckles and need to start using sunblock. But at the heart of this event is connecting businesses. State-run trade agency Kotra has organized meetings with 166 hand-picked international buyers, with around 1,000 one-on-one meetings like this set up.
Every year, the demand is so high. When we send out notices to attract buyers, we get many inquiries, and the countries are becoming more varied. We are receiving so many applications that it's almost impossible to keep up.
That confidence is especially strong in the U.S. market. Last year, South Korea surpassed France as the top cosmetic exporter to the United States, attracting buyers like Dwayne, who runs a spa in Detroit, Michigan. He started using and selling K-Beauty products just last year. Now, he's got 20 brands in his store.
If a client can purchase 3 pieces of skincare for the price of 1 U.S. brand, this is the same results. Or better, honestly. We are finding that they're hungry for the information.
One new hurdle, though, the 15% tariff.
It's not going to deter me from purchasing because the price is already very good.
And as the booths at the expo suggest, the K-beauty industry's growth wasn't driven by big companies. It is smaller companies that are selling on e-commerce overseas, such as Amazon. For this, Amazon Ads is a global sponsor for the first time. To help brands navigate the digital market, the expo is also hosting seminars like the K-Beauty Insight Concert, offering strategies on market trends and using AI for a competitive edge. The expo runs until Saturday. 김도현, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. We begin in the United States and the investigation into the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The FBI has released images of a person of interest and is offering a reward of $100,000 for any information that could lead to an arrest. On Thursday, the FBI and the Utah Department of Public Safety shared 2 surveillance photos featuring a male person of interest. He was seen wearing a long-sleeve black shirt with an American flag motif, dark jeans, sunglasses, and a baseball cap. Authorities believe he's of college age. Law enforcement also recovered what they believe to be the murder weapon, a high-powered bolt-action rifle wrapped in a towel found in a wooded area near the shooting location. Forensic teams have gathered palm prints, a footwear impression, and forearm imprints from the scene. Authorities are looking at multiple leads in the hunt for the killer and are urging the public to come forward with any information that may help identify the suspect. President Donald Trump condemned the attack, calling Kirk a giant of his generation, and announced on Thursday that he will award Kirk the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The 31-year-old right-wing activist and a close ally of President Trump was shot dead while speaking at an event at a university in Utah on Wednesday. In Brazil, a panel of judges from the Supreme Court has convicted former President Jair Bolsonaro of plotting a coup after he lost the 2022 election. On Thursday, a 5-member judge panel of Brazil's Supreme Federal Court reached a majority verdict of 4-1, finding Bolsonaro guilty of multiple charges related to the coup plot. This includes participating in an armed criminal organization, attempting to violently abolish democratic rule, and trying to cling to power despite losing the election. Bolsonaro, already under house arrest, was not present for the verdict and denies all wrongdoing. He faces up to 40 years in prison when the panel formally delivers its ruling. However, additional votes are still pending on some charges. Meanwhile, several former high-ranking officials, including ministers and aides who took part in the plot, were also convicted by the same panel. Belarus released 52 political prisoners on Thursday following a diplomatic appeal by U.S. President Donald Trump to Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko. In exchange, the U.S. eased sanctions on Belarus's national airline, Belavia, allowing it to service and purchase key aircraft components, lifting some of the restrictions that have isolated it in the aviation sector. Those freed include 14 foreign nationals from the UK, France, Germany, and other countries. Despite the recent exchange, over 1,200 political prisoners remain jailed in Belarus. An iguana at a zoo in the United Kingdom gave birth to 8 healthy hatchlings at the end of August, despite having never mated with a male, according to reports on Wednesday. Telford's exotic zoo in Shropshire confirmed that the event occurred via a process called Parthenogenesis, a rare reproductive method in which unfertilized eggs develop into embryos. All 8 babies are genetic clones of their mother, and they are currently being reared in a climate-controlled reptile nursery. While 2 of them will be sent to another zoo, the rest are expected to go on public display soon.
We need to get ready for a rainy one. Right now, the front line is in Jeju, where they're seeing torrential downpours with over 70 millimeters per hour of rain, with heavy rain alerts being in place. The rain will cover the rest of the south through the afternoon before expanding to the capital area. And by tonight, much needed rain will soak Gangwon-do province. But we're talking about significant totals today. Up to 150 millimeters or more is expected in southern Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, Chungcheong-namdo, and Jeollabuk-do provinces. The capital area could also get more than 100 millimeters of downpours, and most of the rain should taper off by tomorrow night. Rain and cloudy skies will bring down the highs into the 20s in most parts, at 28 degrees Celsius here in the capital, and Busan, Gwangju, Daegu both topping out at 27 degrees. With this rain, daytime highs will be even cooler tomorrow, and then another nationwide rain is expected by next Wednesday. Please stay safe and dry out there today.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.
Building a sustainable tomorrow. Connect, innovate, and prosper. Connecting goods to goods, region to region, people to people, generation to generation. Facilitating innovation for all, closing the digital divide. Building an inclusive technology ecosystem, promoting digital innovation by deepening dialogues on AI. Achieving shared prosperity, addressing global challenges. Energy transition, climate change, population decline, and pandemic responses. APEC-related events continuing in Seoul, the capital of the Republic of Korea, where diverse cultures blend. Jeju, the beautiful island, blessed with UNESCO Natural World Heritage Sites. Incheon, the vibrant international city, central hub, connecting Asia Pacific. Busan, the largest maritime city, centering around maritime trade and the logistics industry. And Gyeongju, the city hosting the APEC Economic Leaders Meeting, where 2,000 years of profound history and modern, trendy, and youthful energy blend in a perfect balance. Here, a new chapter of economic exchanges will unfold for a better future.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you is Friday, September 12th here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Wonbin.
Good morning.
Good morning. Also, Grace is with us.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So it's Friday, and as we wrap up another work week, we want to take a moment to dive into a topic that's a bit more scientific, but absolutely fascinating. So gene editing technology. So this cutting-edge field is not only changing the way we understand biology, but it's also opening doors to possibilities that only once exist in science fiction, from treating genetic diseases to potentially redesigning certain traits in living organisms. Today we'll explore how far this technology has come and what it could mean for the future of medicine and human life. So to start us off, Wonbin, can you explain what gene editing technology is?
Yeah, so in simple terms, gene editing technology can fix and edit typos in our DNA to treat and cure inherited diseases. One of the best known tools is CRISPR, which stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. It's a technology derived from a system in bacteria. For some blood disorders like sickle cell disease, gene editing therapies have already won approval in several countries. Researchers are now testing in-body editing, where the editor is delivered almost like an injection to the genes directly inside the patient. Those trials are in the later stages, including the liver and the eye.
And that's really interesting. So instead of taking a patient's cells out, fixing them in a lab and putting them back in, so doctors deliver the gene editing tool directly into the patient's body, which is, like you said, almost like giving an injection. Once assigned, the tool can go to the target organ and correct the faulty gene right there. And like you said, the trials involving the liver and eye are in advanced stages because scientists can more easily deliver the editor to the right place in those organs. So Grace, how else has this technology come so far?
Well, recently there was a report of a successful experiment using prime editing, which is an advanced genome editing technique that functions like a search and replace tool for DNA. And this allows for precise insertions, deletions, and base conversions without creating double strand breaks or needing donor DNA templates. And I know that's a lot to take in, but basically this technology is revolutionary in preventing genetic diseases and is referred to as a precision gene editor.
So far, it seems that gene editing technology has primarily been used for treatment, which is already an incredible achievement in itself. But it does make me wonder, could we eventually move beyond treatment? Is it possible that in the future we could actually use it to edit genes in healthy individuals?
So it's kind of a yes and no, because technically, yes, we can, but is it the way we imagine it? For example, changing the height of a child or the appearance? Not really. So in case of IVF, we can determine the gender of the baby in advance, and sometimes we can select as well. And moreover, if one parent has a single gene disorder, they can test the embryos and implant the one without the mutation or the disorder. However, choosing the hair color, eye color, and fixing complex multi-gene conditions is not possible yet, but it may be possible in the future one day. And just another note, in the US, some services of checking the baby's IQ before they're born are offered as well. So yes, it is available, but not in a way that we imagine it.
So you shared some interesting facts, but then for IVF, you can also select the baby's gender if you can with the situation. So would that be something you would do?
Yes, if I have the option, I would choose it. Well, because for me, I want my first kid to be a son. I think it'll be easier for me to raise because I can connect a little bit more easily, as I was raised a boy. As a boy, if I have a daughter as a first child, I think it'll be a little bit more difficult for me. So if I was given the option to choose, I think I would happily choose one.
So the idea of being able to edit genes is also incredibly tempting. Imagine a future where we could prevent serious diseases in babies before they're even born, or even influence traits like intelligence, appearance, or athletic ability. So in other words, the possibility of designing babies, but with such power obviously comes big ethical questions. So Grace, what are some of the main ethical concerns scientists and society are debating when it comes to gene editing in babies?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, so-called designing babies using this gene editing is virtually impossible right now, at least. The 2023 Third International Summit on Human Genome Editing concluded that embryo editing was premature, citing ethical and technical limitations. Now, some ethical concerns in genome editing include potential harm from unintended consequences, questions of safety and efficacy, issues of access and equity, or the moral implications of gene changes that can be heritable. So with all that said, at the moment, gene editing technology can only be used to treat people who have already been born.
So like you said, the ethical concerns is part of why opinions can be sharply divided, and the questions don't always have clear answers, and that's why I'd like to hear directly from a panelist. So what do you think about the different aspects of embryo editing, from its medical potential to the ethical concerns? So to find out, we're going to do a quick OX round. We have our OX paddles right here. So I'll read a statement, and each panelist answers O for X and obviously X for no, and then they will give us a brief reason why. So the first question is, should embryonic editing be allowed not just for medical purposes, but for enhancements like appearance or ability? Wonbin, do you want to share your opinion first?
I go for O. I think we should allow for this to happen, because if the technology gives us the privilege to edit our appearance or physical ability, I don't see a big reason to block it at all cost. Now, obviously, there must be some regulations following common sense. For example, you must not be allowed to change your baby's height to 5 meters or 7 meters tall. And I believe that it will bring more gains than the potential harm that it may cause. cause. So I think I support it.
Okay, what about you, Grace?
I said X because I do think that there is a moral consideration to this. Embryonic editing, when used for purely creating these designer babies that we talked about, has the potential to become a slippery slope toward using this technology for enhancing the desirable traits like height, intelligence, and even athletic ability.
Just out of curiosity for yourselves, is there any like appearance or, you know, like athletic quality or anything like traits that you would want to kind of change for yourself or enhance?
In short, I would make myself sleep less because I'm a person who needs a lot of sleep to properly operate, about 7 to 8 hours. So if I can, I would just, you know, slightly dial that down to like 3 hours so I can get more total productivity.
That's a really practical one.
Yeah.
What about you, Grace? Do you have anything?
I mean, mine's not that practical. Mine's just a physical trait that I would change, which is add on like 5 more centimeters to my height.
That's fair. Like, I think that's a very relatable one too. So moving on to the second question. So even if there's still a chance of side effects, should embryonic editing be permitted? Wonbin, what are your thoughts on this?
I choose O because I think of it this way. Let's take self-driving cars, for example. I believe that they must be commercialized despite the risk of errors and the accidents. And not because its accident rate is 0, but because it's actually lower than the accident rate of humans. So my point is, nothing can be perfect and no technology will have absolutely 0 risk. Therefore, if the theoretical gains are higher than the potentially missed cures, I think we must allow it.
So to turn this kind of back on you, so if you were able to sleep less, would you be willing to be part of like the lab experiments?
Obviously, there are many things to consider, such as the failure rate and the consequences. But if it's within the marginal rate, you know, so okay, if the failure rate is 7%, I'm not going to do it. It's too much risk.
Fair enough.
But if it's within the marginal error, for example, 0.2% or under 0.1%, I think I would definitely take it because technically we are taking risks every day. Like when we cross the road, we're taking risk. When we're driving, there's a chance of us getting into a car accident. So I think if the rate is in a controlled state, I think I would definitely take it.
Fair enough. What are your thoughts on this?
So I said X. Just because the full long-term effects of genome editing are not yet understood, even by scientists, and raising questions about the safety and efficacy of these technologies, which will be used directly on our body. So I think that's a big concern for me because it's not like we're dealing with like something that we can do. Like we are responsible for our own actions, but something that's like we're actually tweaking things that are inside our nature and our biology.
I think, like you said, there's so many safety concerns. What would be the biggest safety concern for you?
So when I was reading about this, I heard that, you know, like mistakes happen. If you make a mistake in the gene editing process, you might be able to create like an unhealthy gene or like a new disease gene that would not only have implications on your own life, but then you would be passing that down to future generations.
That's a really good point. So embryonic editing, this is our last question. So embryonic editing may become a very costly technology. So if access is limited to only the wealthy, is that right? There are concerns that this will only be accessible to the wealthy. So what are your thoughts on this, Wonbin?
I think we should still allow it to be commercialized despite the price because like I just said, the cost will definitely be a very big obstacle for many people. However, just because the price is expensive, we should not hold back the advancement of technology because of the inequality of the beneficiary. And on top of that, there are already many treatments that have the same conflict as such as plastic surgery and different skin treatments. I did some research. They can get really expensive. And lastly, allowing the technology to be commercialized will actually reduce the price in the long term as the cost of technology becomes cheaper over time, thus allowing more people to benefit from it. So even though it's expensive, we should still allow it so that the price can go down for many people.
Right. So what are your thoughts on this?
So I said X once again, just because I definitely do think that the gene therapies will be high cost and could only become accessible to the wealthy, which could potentially exacerbate the existing health and social inequalities that we already see. And its widespread use could even create a society that's less accepting of differences and a class of individuals who are defined by their engineered, more superior genes.
Right, I see both sides. Like, Wonmi made some good points too, but also what you said too. Like, there's like a popular meme on social media where people say like, "You're not ugly, you're just poor." And if these technologies become more advanced and only accessible to just like few, I feel like that divide could be more prominent. Right. So it does raise a lot of questions. So even among our panel, there is a noticeable difference in how we view the possibilities and limits of gene editing. And now that we've explored our own perspectives, we wanted to hear what our viewers think as well. So to get a better sense of public opinion, we took the question to the Arirang News YouTube channel and asked, should embryonic editing be allowed? And here's what they had to say. So a clear majority came out against it. Only 26% said yes, while 74% said no. So the results show just how cautious the public feels about the issue, with most people still hesitant to cross that line. We've gotten a glimpse of the debate both among ourselves and through a viewer survey, but to really understand the implications, we'll need an expert's perspective. And that conversation is coming up right after the break, so stay with us.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Dr. Yang Jian, a research fellow at Yonsei University College of Medicine's Department of Medical and Social Sciences. So hi, Dr. Yang. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So how far has gene editing technology advanced so far? What are the latest developments?
Yes, CRISPR-Cas9 is a rapidly advancing third-generation gene editing technology. Moreover, recent studies continue to report advances in base editing and prime editing that enhance the precision and versatility of genome editing. A significant milestone in 2025 was the case of baby KJ in the United States. At just 6 to 7 months old, KJ received the world's first personalized gene editing therapy that was specifically designed to address his unique genetic mutations. Additionally, the U.S. FDA has officially approved some gene therapies like Luxturna for inherited retinal disorders and Casgevy for severe sickle cell disease and thalassemia. However, not all trials have been successful. For example, some muscular dystrophy studies have reported serious adverse effects, including patient deaths. In addition, the 2018 announcement by the He and Kui regarding creation of gene-edited twin babies resistant to HIV raised significant ethical concerns. In this regard, CRISPR-Cas9 is still filled with both promise and uncertainty.
Right. Thank you for your overview of the situation. Now, if public funding is used to support gene editing research, what guidelines should be in place, and who should be held responsible if side effects or unintended consequences occur?
Yes, public funding involves making policy decisions that consider the necessity and uncertainty of research, global trends, and the potential social and industrial impacts. It often prioritizes studies on rare and incurable diseases that lack treatment options, especially when genome editing presents significant benefits over existing therapies. However, funding may be limited if the technology carries significant bioethical risks or lacks societal acceptance, as seen with germline gene editing. International consensus calls for a precautionary approach due to its effect on future generations and ethical uncertainties. For example, restrictions on U.S. federal research funding for human germline gene editing mirrors these concerns. Decisions about public funding, therefore, be guided by considerations of social consensus alongside these ethical and normative constraints. And the next, the determining responsibility involves identifying the causal relationship between negligence and its consequences. Liability generally fall under the party at fault. This could be the regulator or the medical professional or even the patient whose predispositions may have affected the outcome. However, determining these factors is not always straightforward, especially in the context of emerging technologies. If side effects are unforeseeable or unavoidable, The issue then shifts to broader legal and policy considerations regarding the fair and equitable distribution of risks. In such cases, public compensation schemes or private insurance programs may need to be established to provide adequate support.
Dr. Yang, then looking ahead, how feasible is embryonic gene editing and what ethical challenges does it raise for scientists and society?
Well, the future is uncertain and technology carries explosiveness. New discoveries may emerge at any time. So CRISPR has already demonstrated its promising outlook. Strong investments from the industry and the potential regulatory changes in the United States could speed up the development of embryonic gene editing. However, any errors, as Grace mentioned, in gene editing could impact every tissue and organ of future generations, and even successful edits may carry unknown risks. In addition, editing embryos means intervening in a life that has no choice. This raises questions about the best interest of the future child and the proper limits of parental discretion. There is also the risk of reviving eugenic ideas designer baby. Such practice could deepen inequality and create a dystopian world like the one imagined in the film Gattaca. The issue is where we draw the line. Once this technology gains momentum in an undesirable direction, reversing it will be very difficult. That is why we must exercise prudent vigilance as a society.
All right, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us today.
Thank you.
So we spoke with an expert to get a deeper understanding of the science and ethics behind gene editing. But on a more personal note, it raises an interesting question about whether you would consider using gene editing if you were going to have children. So Wonbin, would you want to intervene to prevent disease or influence certain traits, or would you rather leave things as they are?
I would definitely take advantage of this technology. Well, in terms of medical reasons, obviously, like I have back pain, I don't want my kid to have that. But personally, what I really want, and this is where the SF imagination kicks in, is to have a son who looks exactly like me and a daughter who looks exactly like my future wife. And I think this technology can help me. And I know it's not the most technical answer, but I think it is a good way to enjoy the technology without overdoing it, like make my kid look like Brad Pitt, or I'm gonna make the next BTS. Yeah.
That's fair enough. So what about you, Grace?
Like I mentioned during our OX round, my biggest concern for now is that we just don't know the long-term risks associated with genome editing technology. It could cause off-target edits or other unforeseen effects that lead to new health risks or unintended changes in the entire human gene pool. And this in turn could create a new gene, like I said, maybe an unhealthy gene that could be passed on to future generations, which would technically defeat the whole purpose of why we're doing this in the first place.
Right, so to wrap up our discussion today, we're left with some big questions. There are questions that scientists, policymakers, and all of us will need to face and navigate as this technology continues to evolve. So what does a responsible future for advancements in life sciences look like, and how can we make sure that breakthroughs in biotech benefit society while still respecting ethical boundaries?
So like you just said, this topic dances on a very fine line of ethics. So, and obviously, the technology can advance much quicker without any regulations, just like in the times of war, but there will definitely be devastating side effects that will allow it, if we allow it to go fully off leash. So people may forget the importance of life when we reach a point where we can just basically press out perfect babies every single time. Therefore, there must be regulations for it, and we must take our upcoming steps very, very carefully.
I think that was very well put. What are your thoughts on this, Grace?
Yeah, I think to use the advancements in biotechnology ethically, we have to integrate a proactive ethical framework for every stage of development and its deployment, focusing on all the stakeholders involved. There must be transparency in communication and adaptable ethical guidelines. We have to assess the potential negative consequences, like the biological and environmental disruption that it may cause, to ensure that there's equitable access to the benefits of this technology, and to respect the diverse cultural and social values that are regarding this intervention in our natural lives and its processes.
So as we've seen today, gene editing is a technology full of promise, but also full of questions. So from preventing serious diseases to the possibility of designing traits in babies, the science is moving fast while ethical and social debates continue to evolve. So the challenge for all of us, scientists, policymakers, and the public is finding a balance between innovation and responsibility. But one thing is clear, the conversation about the future of life sciences is just beginning, and it's a conversation we all need to be part of. And this brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation, but News Gen will be back Monday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Big thanks to Wonbin.
Always a pleasure.
And also Grace.
Thanks for having me.
And to all our viewers, thank you so much for watching, and we hope you have the best weekend. We are
News Generation.